Welcome to From the Sidelines here on TVC Channel 40. This is your sports show, your weekly sports show, where we discuss with the sports makers and analysts looking at local and international as well as regional sports. And today, where it's all local, we're going to be talking football as we look at the start of the football season, the 2024 football season. We have some exciting matches on tow in the National Bank Group of Companies Premier League and in the SKNFA Division 1. I'm your host, Andre Huey, and my guest this week is LaShawn Dixon. He is a reporter with the St. Kitts Nevis Observer, sports reporter himself, and also covers football. If there are any two journalists in St. Kitts Nevis, not tooting my own horn, but any two journalists in St. Kitts Nevis that can tell you about football here in St. Kitts Nevis, it would be us two. Yeah. So we have a very great show lined up for you today. LaShawn, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Glad to be here on the program and hoping to give my analysis on what I've seen thus far for the Premier Division and Division 1 football.
All right. Well, let's start with the Premier Division because we've seen some exciting games into. First of all, we have 10 teams, as it used to be before. 10 teams. The top 4 teams are going to go to the playoffs. The bottom 2 teams are going to get relegated. And the third to last team, the 8th place team, or rather the 7th place team, will get a chance to. So I said 7th, 8th place. Sorry, the 8th place team will get a chance to play to either remain in the Premier League or get relegated. We saw that introduced last season. Created some excitement. We had Garden Hotspurs dangling with danger, but they were able to easily beat Mantab and stay in the Premier League. We'll talk about that later. But your thoughts on the Premier League so far, based on the games you've seen?
Well, it's after a good start. It's setting up itself to be a very competitive league at all aspects of the table. At the top, we could see some teams already stamping the authority. At the bottom, we see some teams already behind the 8 ball and are starting to worry some of their fans, but it's shaping up to be a very competitive league.
Yeah,
that's fine.
And I think with the SKNFA putting 10 teams, bringing it back to 10 teams, is making it more competitive, and I think it's achieving that purpose because we're seeing now where, as you said, there are teams who have started off slowly, causing your fans to worry. We're going to talk about those teams later on, but let's talk about the teams that are stamping their authority so far. SL Horses St. Paul's United, not a surprise. I think the disappointment of losing the finals last season, when everybody thought they would have won it, I think that kind of stung them, and they've come out hitting hard. They lost the President's Cup again. So, well, not again, but lost the President's Cup. So 2 competitive games back to back, 3 competitive games back to back they've lost. They sort of now kind of carry that, chip on their shoulder, so to speak.
Yes, and it's a team that understands what it takes to get to a Premier League season. Is that the team that knows what it takes to win. Last season didn't end the way that they would have wanted it. This season, the President's Cup didn't go the way they wanted it, but so far in the Premier League, they have been perfect. They have looked well. They look good on the counter-attack, as they always do, but I see evolution from them with the patterns of play, some nice one-touch football going forward, and as what's called it, the goal scoring supremo, Peter Freeman, who was MVP of the regular season last year, and he has already made a good stake for that again in the early part of the season.
The beautiful thing also about St. Paul's this year is that they have a new coach. Prison leader, former player, now retired, and he's now throwing his hat in the ring and coaching. His manager, Mr. Darren Edmead, has put full support behind him. He believes he's going to do a good job. Your thoughts on him so far?
Well, you can't question it. Other than the President's Cup where they went on to a very good Rams Village Superstars, you can't question his coaching style as yet. But it's a long season, a long way to go. He will hit some rough patches. He will hit some difficulties, and that's where coaches make their name, how they get out of those green patches, red patches.
Or red patches, yeah. Well, speaking of Village Superstars, after winning the President's Cup, right on the heels of winning that, their next game was against Village Superstars. Well, their second game, I think, of the season was against St. Paul's. So they met again. It was a repeat of the finals, and St. Paul's stamped their authority in that game and won it comfortably 2-0.
Yeah. Well, the typical in sports, the revenge factor. You won the President's Cup. Well, I can take these 3 points and put you behind me early on. But Rams Village Superstars, they've had a solid start to the season already. We saw what they did to Trafalgar South Stars, their neighbors, and they're still a team to look out for. Although you may look at the table and you see them down in third, they're still the champions. They're still the team with the biggest target on their back, and all 9 other teams will be coming to try snatch what they have.
Yeah. The thing about Village too is that they have like a repository of young players. You see a
Mm,
lot of young players are getting
yeah,
opportunities this season. Some got last season, but I've seen Stephen Clark now blooding a lot of the young players now. We saw a lot of them played in the Trafalgar South Stars game, and we're
yeah,
seeing more and more coming out. So that's really good. We're seeing their under 20
yeah.
players now coming to the fore. So the Village is certainly a team to watch. Let's talk about Bath United because I've been
Hmm.
impressed with Bath so far. I think Bath United has come out strong. They've come out with a purpose, and they've come out beginning to prove themselves because we've always seen last season they were very close to making the playoffs. The
Mm.
season before that they were knocking on the door. Now they're not a team that's just going to go up and down. In the Premier League in Division One, they're here. They've been now what 3-4 years in a row,
Mm.
and they're stamping the authority early.
Yeah, and it's another season of progress if it continues in this vein. For Bath, last season, as you said, they almost got into the playoffs, the Super Six. They fell just short in the end to Ramsville Superstars, who went on
Yep.
to win the title. So their team to look out for. They've had a good start to the season. They upset teams like Connery in a goal almost the last kick of the game. They represented themselves well against Ramsville Superstars, although they lost it. It's a game that could have gone any other way.
Hmm.
Could they have finished the chances? So they're the team to look out for. They're very sharp. They're very fit. They run about for the full 90 minutes, and they will cause some upsets
Yep.
in this Premier Division.
It makes you wonder because with those two teams going down this season, it
Hmm.
makes you wonder whether, I mean, some will probably argue Bath might be one of those teams, but judging from, as you said, judging from their past performances and how they've started so far, it is probably highly unlikely. It's probably easy to say highly unlikely that they will end up in that relegation battle if they continue in this form.
Yeah. The way they started the season, and if you piggyback that with what they did last season, they're definitely three worst teams in the league than back.
Mhm.
I expect them to remain in the league. I From how they started the season, I expect them to make another playoff push. Maybe this season might come too early considering we're going back to just four teams in the playoffs.
Mhm.
So this season may come too early for them to make the playoff push. But they're a team to watch. They're a team to look out for.
Right. Let's talk about some other teams as we go down the table. Well, we're not really going down the table, we're
Newtown.
just picking teams at random. One of the teams that have started early, and I see the fans coming out and they're
Mm.
saying, yes,
Mm.
the Newtown is back. Honda Newtown United. New sponsor, they have new
Yeah.
jerseys, they look like an international team. They've started off well, they're playing nice free flowing football. They have a new coach in Pedro, and we saw Azim Jenkins as assistant coach who's assisting them. There is a new vibe about Newtown this season. People are saying Newtown is back. Is that your view?
Well, they've been impressive thus far to start the season. You said everything has been new for them.
So Newtown is new.
Newtown is new. I will go to call them Renaissance Newtown United because
Yeah.
the way they have progressed this season, it looks really good thus far. It's still early days. It's a long season, so but what I've seen thus far, I've been impressed with, considering where they were for years prior,
Mhm.
and then all the changes that were made coming into this season. It looks really good. It gives the Newtown fans hope. Let's see if they can
If they
keep
can
it up
keep it up.
and maintain the start they've made.
And it's not just players. I mean, you heard me mention just now that Pedro is now the coach. Jeffrey Hazel is the
Hmm.
coach there. There have been a lot of coaching changes across the league.
Yeah,
So it's not just players who are making their moves. We're seeing coaches making the moves.
yep,
We see Nets going to Keon, so
yeah,
playing Keon for the first time. We see, Pedro at moving from Sandy Point to
yeah,
Newtown. We're seeing also Azim Jenkins there. No coaching change at Connery. We'll talk about them later.
yeah,
Bath maintains their
yeah.
legendary coach in Alex Claxton. So we're seeing a lot of movements going on, and it makes the
Mm,
league quite excited to see these changes, both
yes.
players as well as coaches. Transferring the knowledge, so to speak.
Yeah, and when coaches move, their tactics, their strategies, that moves with them, and
Yeah, and some players move with them too.
yeah, players move. I just was say players move with them too, and it brings a whole new feel, a whole new approach from each side towards the football. So it's still early days as we've been saying, and we would like to see how these coaching changes may play out. we can't give an answer until the end of the season,
Yeah.
where when all the football has been played.
All right. Well, at this point, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue talking about the Premier League. We'll kind of venture into Division One, and later on in the show, we'll talk some international football. You're watching From the Sidelines here. We're talking football this week. I'm your host, Andre Huey. We'll be right back.
I love the cable because they really look out for different groups of people. I'm on the creative pack, and they provide services tailored and dedicated to people just like me.
Introducing St. Kitts and Nevis' newest TV channel, Television Caribbean, TVC Channel 40 on the cable's Ultra TV. TVC promises to deliver the finest in television broadcasting in St. Kitts and Nevis and the Caribbean, with some of the best local programs in news, sports, and entertainment. Join us for Insights, where we delve into the lives of our guests.
Let me see what happened if I put this to it. A big explosion, like, okay, note to self, don't do that again.
Or get in-depth analysis on Newsline 360. We have sports, entertainment, and inspiration. It's all here on TVC Channel 40 on the cable's Ultra TV, on TelTV Cable Network in St. Martin, and on our website www.tvcplus.live. TVC Channel 40. See the difference.
And we're back here on From the Sidelines. I'm your host, Andre Huey. We're talking football, local football this week here on the show. And our guest is St. Kitts Nevis Observer reporter, LaShawn Dixon. Before the break, LaShawn, we talked about the top four teams in the Premier League, or the teams that have, or four of the teams that have been doing well. We want now to look at the other teams. Let's start with St. Peter's, Development Bank St. Peter's FC. And that's another thing. We see the league has a sponsor, title sponsor in National Bank Group of Companies. And then teams that didn't have a sponsor before, they have sponsors now. And so St. Peter's was one of them. They went the whole season last year and the year before without a sponsor. They now have a sponsor, Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis. And that new look, that new vibe, we're seeing something different about St. Peter's with that new sponsorship they have.
Yeah, and St. Peter's, they've been hot and cold this season. I think they may be the only team that has won one, draw one, and lost one. They had the game against Cairn where they went up early and had to fight back, and they allowed Cairn to fight back and earn a draw. In the game against Spurs, they put Spurs to the sword and got their first win of the season. They were put to the sword by a good-looking St. Paul side. So they haven't been bad. For me, they haven't been bad. It's just that it hasn't come together for them for a full 90 minutes as yet. I don't believe, other than the Spurs game. But they're a team to look for. They're one of those teams who could sneak into one of the top four spots. Yeah.
I agree. And the thing about St. Peter's is that, well, they changed their coach last season, which was Deco. So Deco has been coaching them and is still coaching this season. I noticed something. They had two halves of last season. The first part where they started out slowly, and then somewhere along the line they picked up early in round one. But then they started to decline, and that decline started when Deco had to go with the national team because he was the national team coach at the time. And so when he left to go to Florida, the team just went on a downward spiral, and they never recovered.
Yeah, and the only last this season came when he wasn't there as well.
Right.
So it's something to pay attention to.
So it's as if he's not there, they don't do well, and when he's there, they do well. So I guess he has to try and stay there for the whole season. So, and which is not going to happen
and that also coincides with Taekwondo Tyrrell.
Because he also has to travel with the national team, and he's doing well with the national team. So they have to find a way to function without your coach. I'm sure they have competent assistant coaches. The players will just have to find a way to just follow the instructions of the assistant coach, respect the assistant coach, and so that they can continue. Because, as you said, they're a team that can make it to the playoffs. They can sneak into the playoffs. They're a very good team, but they just don't have a consistent season, as you said. So we'll watch St. Peter's closely to see what happens. Okay, let's talk about Cairn Rockets, Flow 4G Cairn Rockets. Now, this is also another team that tends to start out hot and then gets cold. This season they're kind of lukewarm.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not the greatest of starts, but the season is still young. They still could find their feet. They're just into a new coach. They had a strong first round last season and a post second round, but they still have to um, find their. They still are to find their feet under
Yeah.
the new coach.
I think, and I interviewed him at the end of one of their matches, and he said that he's still trying to discover or get accustomed to the system because he's new. He's a new coach. He's going in. He's not going to change the system altogether. He's going to go in, see what they have, and then gradually introduce what he's doing. But again, the season is shorter this season because we have less teams.
Yep.
So while you're trying to figure out the system and what system you're going to use, you could fall behind the 8 ball quickly
Yep.
if you don't get it together. But knowing Keon, I know they're going to be in the mix somewhere along the line. They also have some new players as well. We saw Shaheem Prentice following his coach to Keon. So we expect to see some verve from him and the team. We've seen that so far as well.
Yeah.
So we expect to see Keon doing something.
Yeah.
So even though they are lukewarm, we know they're going to get hot sometime soon. All right. So outside of those teams, we have Old Road. Yes, and we actually should have talked about Old Road before. But Old Road, MFCR Old Road United Jets, they were a first-time playoff team last season. They did very well. They didn't make it to the finals. They weren't far from making the finals. And I think a lot of people have them as team to get into the playoffs this season. But again, it's 4 teams.
Yeah.
It's going to be a tougher fight for them this season.
Well, coming into this season, I had them as the dark horses to take it all. Not only making the playoffs, to take it all. They're missing probably the best player.
Right.
And he'll be out for a very long time for most of the season.
Most of the first round at least.
Yeah.
Well, all the first round and part of the second round. Yeah.
And they will need someone else or others to step up to fill the void left by him. But
do you think that is the reason why they had this indifferent start?
Probably, possibly. He is very a point of creativity and goal scoring for them. So not having him leaves a massive void in the not only the Old Road setup but also the national team setup. But once they could hang around until he comes back, I think they will be a team to be reckoned with if they could get into the playoffs and possibly make some noise.
Right. Well, we'll see what happens there with Old Road. Now we go down to the teams that are in danger, or the teams that potentially will be in danger this season. Let's start with Connery, Saul Island Auto Supply's Connery FC. Now Connery tends to start the season slow.
Yeah.
So this is not unusual to see them start off slowly. But again, as I said earlier, we have a shorter season, less teams, and only 4 positions for the playoffs. On top of that, you have now a relegation playoff. It started last season. You don't want to get into that zone at all. Because it's a one-off game. You never know what could happen. So, Connery, what do they need to do to sort of get things going for them?
We saw against Bath where they had a very easy opportunity. And the striker,
open goal.
the striker, it was harder to miss, and he hit the post. Against Old Road, we saw them hit the post 3 times in the second half. Really, really close. Game was on a knife edge. One of those balls on the other side of the post, and they could have been way further up the table.
Janify didn't hit the post. He hit the ball over the crossbar. He missed the target totally, and it was it was a gaping goal, and he missed it. But again, and that's something their coach said they have to work on. They have to work on finishing, because had they finished those chances, at least 50% of those chances, they would have been in a better position.
They probably would have been as high as third.
So they would have been in a much better position. So I know Connery has a lot of work to do. But again, the season is short. They have a lot of work to do to catch up, to ensure. And I think that makes the season a lot more exciting because you don't have a lot of room for error. You have to make sure you're on your P's and Q's on your given day. Garden Hotspurs, Skelett Garden Hotspurs, they have a new sponsor. For years they were sponsored by Hobson Enterprises. They now have a new sponsor. But Spurs still haven't found the gear yet. Last season we saw they were in the relegation playoff, and there was a clarion call from fans and from other players to say, hey guys, let us get ourselves together, because this is not Spurs. This is not the Spurs that we know. This is not the Spurs that we are accustomed to. But I want you to hold that thought. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to, in the final segment of the show, we're going to touch on Spurs, and then we have Trafalgar South Stars to talk about. They're newly promoted. Then we'll talk a bit of Division 1, and international football. You're watching From the Sidelines here on TVC Channel 40.
Online radio has never been this great. It's Voice of the Caribbean Radio at voiceofthecaribbean.net. Tune into Voice of the Caribbean Radio for great Caribbean programs, news, entertainment, sports, and current affairs. Wake up each morning and be inspired with One Day at a Time with Kim Huey. Stay abreast with news across the Caribbean and internationally with the Caribbean News Hour, and be entertained with shows like Reggaeville, Caribbean Classics, and Jive Music Show. Visit our website or listen us on TuneIn Radio. There is so much more on Voice of the Caribbean Radio, reaching the Caribbean and beyond. Check website for program schedule.
The SKN Newsline website now offers you more news. Log on to www.sknnewsline.com for local, regional, and international news. You can also watch the latest newscast and keep abreast with news in sports, all from sknnewsline.com. That's www.sknnewsline.com. News at your fingertips.
And we're back in the final segment of From the Sidelines here on TVC Channel 40. I'm your host, Andre Huey, and my guest is LaShawn Dixon of the St. Kitts Nevis Observer. We're talking football, Premier League football. We have two more teams we're going to talk about quickly, then we move to Division 1. And just before the break, I was talking about Spurs and the fact that Spurs have just not hit high gear since last season. They had a clarion call to, hey guys, we need to get things together because we don't want to get relegated. They avoid relegation easily, but you don't want to get in that position again because Division 1 this season looks stronger. Yeah. And a third place team could cause some problems for a team in 8th position.
Yeah, and for Spurs, I don't think they would want to go back through that again. As you say, last year they were in a one-off game where
could go anywhere.
Robert Green could have gone anywhere, and they managed to get to that. But this year, if things are to remain how they are going now, they may not even get that opportunity. They might get relegated automatically. So they find themselves second from bottom, no points, and it's not looking good for them. They had a good game against St. Paul's, but beyond that, they haven't impressed. You said they have a new sponsor, Skelec. But they have not been powered. So
they'll have to get powered really soon. I'm sure they will at some point will find a gear. But again, time is of the essence because you don't have much time to play with. No, so it makes the league a lot more competitive. Quickly, let's talk about Trafalgar South Stars. They're the Division 1 champions. They got promoted last season, only losing one game all season long, and they got promoted. They, interestingly enough, have found quite a bit of goals so far this season, just not getting the win. Yep.
Trafalgar, they're a team that even before when they were in the Premier League, they play well for 60 minutes and then they peter off. And that seems to be the same for this season thus far. They were put to the sword against Ramsville Superstars. They were beaten comfortably by Bath, and it looks like it'll be another tough season for them to try and move up the table. Hopefully they could get a win, but it will be tough with a smaller Premier League, so it will be tough for them to find a 3 points somewhere, even added points somewhere, but hopefully for their sake they could find it somehow.
Let's move down to Division 1 because Division 1 football is exciting this season. I've been covering some of the games and I think it's more competitive this season. You have, for example, three teams that were in the Premier League that are now there: Security Forces, Sandy Point, and Saddlers, and they're all doing well so far. Sandy Point probably more so than the others because they've topped the table early on in the season. What do you expect will happen in Division 1, considering again you have three former Premier League teams that are fighting to get back into the Premier League?
Well, it's the same old problem the authorities would have had with where you see there are teams that are too good for Division 1 but not good enough for the Premier League, and finding and as you said, when you look at the table, you see three teams who were in the Premier Division last season, and they're in contention again for automatic promotion and a playoff push against a Premier Division team. So it's that same thing again. Those teams that are I would call them Premier League Division 1.5 because they're too good for Division 1, but they're
not good enough for Premier League.
They're not good
Do you
enough.
think then that you could have an upstart from Division 1 that could upset the apple cart within these three teams? Because I'm looking at a team like Manta that went through an unbeaten season, didn't make it to the Premier League. They have a chip on their shoulder, and they've started off with that chip on their shoulder.
Yeah,
They could probably upset the apple cart.
yeah, and that's true. They fell short by one game last season, and they would be looking to bounce back and get a push. But they too may be considered one of those teams where they're probably too good for Division 1, but not good enough for the Premier Division.
Well, we'll be watching Division 1 closely this season. So just for our listeners and for our viewers, the top two teams in Division 1 earn automatic promotion to the Premier League. The bottom two teams in Premier League will automatically be relegated. And as I said earlier, the team that's in the 8th position in the Premier League will enter what you call a relegation promotion playoff, which was introduced last season, where they'll play the team ranked 3rd in Division 1. So to either stay in the Premier League or for that team in Division 1 to be promoted to the Premier League. So that is certainly exciting. We're looking forward to that. Before we end the show, let's talk quickly about international football. We've seen St. Kitts Nevis taking on San Marino in 2 friendlies and done very well. Your thoughts on the World Cup qualifiers that's coming up? We're seeing a new look St. Kitts Nevis team. We're seeing some of the old players, but we're also seeing some new players in the mix.
Well, yeah, there definitely has been some turnovers of some players for the St. Kitts and Nevis national team. They played San Marino. They represented themselves well. San Marino team, they've had it hard in the last 20 years trying to get a win, and
that's because they're in a tough division.
Yeah, they're a tough area to play football in Europe, where some of the best footballers are found, some of the best footballing nations are found, and they've always drawn the short end of the stick. But they represented themselves well against St. Kitts and Nevis, and St. Kitts and Nevis in turn did represent themselves well in San Marino. But as I said, the World Cup qualifiers coming up. It's a very tricky group with Bahamas, Costa Rica, and another team I can't.
It wasn't Grenada.
Grenada? Yeah, I think it's Grenada. So it's a tough group. It's a group we can do fairly okay in. Costa Rica will probably pose the biggest challenge. But Grenada, we know there are no slouches when it comes to CONCACAF football. They've played at the Gold Cup level multiple times, and they've done well in World Cup qualifiers as well. And it's a World Cup. It's for a World Cup played in our backyard, in the CONCACAF region, and it's an expanded World Cup as well. So there's opportunities for more places for smaller nations like St. Kitts and Nevis.
Yeah. So it would be great if we have that opportunity to qualify. I mean, I saw what the Gold Cup did for us in terms of nationalism, and I could just imagine what it would do if we get to the World Cup. But anyway, LaShawn, we're out of time. That's where we leave it. Thank you so much for being on the show today and providing your great analysis as always. And thank you, the viewers, for watching From the Sidelines here on TVC Channel 40. Remember, you can watch us again at our repeated time slots, or also you can visit our website, tvcplus.live, and visit our social media pages. From all of us here at TVC Channel 40, thank you once again. I'm Andre Huey. I was your host. This has been From the Sidelines.